Have you ever heard a single word bring an entire room to silence? A word so powerful that even the toughest soldier, the kind who had seen years of combat, froze in disbelief. This is the story of a woman whose identity was hidden behind a call sign. To most people, she was just a stranger in the crowd. But when a Marine colonel demanded to know her call sign, and she answered Phantom 7, everything changed. Stick with me till the end, because this story will give you chills. And before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Grow for Justice, and tell me in the comments Kahan Se Dek Rahi Ho. I want to know where my heroes are tuning in from. The story begins at a veterans gathering in Virginia. The auditorium was filled with men and women in uniforms, decorated Marines, Navy SEALs, Air Force pilots, and Army Rangers. The air smelled faintly of polished brass, leather shoes, and quiet respect. Most of those attending were known, faces recognized from missions and medals. And then there was her. She walked in quietly, her hair pulled back, wearing a simple black jacket, jeans, and boots that had seen better days. No events, no medals, just presence. To most, she looked like a civilian, a guest, perhaps someone's relative. No one gave her a second glance. But at the front of the stage stood Colonel David Harrington, a man known for his strictness and his loyalty. He had been in Marines for over 25 years, seen combat on 3 continents, and carried scars you couldn't see. Harrington had a habit. Whenever he addressed a room, he asked veterans to share their names and call signs. For him, it wasn't about ceremony. It was about remembering the bonds forged in fire. When his eyes landed on the quiet woman in the back, something about her posture caught him. Straight, sharp, military. He called out, "You there. Stand up. State your name and call sign." The room turned. Dozens of eyes watched as she rose slowly, calm but unyielding. She hesitated for a second, and then, in a voice clear enough to cut through the silence, she said, "My call sign was Phantom 7. The effect was immediate. The colonel's face drained of color. He stood frozen, his jaw slightly open, as if the very air had been ripped from his lungs. Whispering erupted in the audience. Some tilted their heads, confused. Others gasped softly, as though they had just heard a ghost. "Phantom 7, the colonel repeated, his voice breaking. He knew the stories. Every Marine did. Phantom 7 wasn't just a name. It was a legend. The call sign belonged to a classified operator whose missions were spoken of only in whispers. A shadow in the battlefield. A savior in the dead of night. Some said Phantom 7 had once walked alone into an ambush to rescue a trapped squad, returning with every Marine alive. Others claimed she had been declared Kia, killed in action, years ago, and now here she was standing right in front of him. The colonel's hands trembled as he saluted her, not out of protocol, but out of reverence. The entire room followed suit. For the first time that night, the woman looked down, uncomfortable with the attention. She had spent years trying to disappear, and now the past had dragged her back into the light. Later that night, the colonel sought her out. "You can't just walk in here, speak that name, and expect us not to ask," he said, his voice low but firm. She sighed. "I never wanted this. I came here just to sit quietly, to remember, to honor." But Harrington pressed. "They told us Phantom 7 was gone, that you didn't make it out." Her eyes glistened. "That's what they wanted you to believe. I was pulled out of the field after my last mission. Too much heat. Too many ghosts. I buried Phantom 7 because if I didn't, I wouldn't survive." The colonel nodded slowly, realizing he was speaking not just to a warrior, but to someone who had carried years of pain and silence. Yet the Marine inside him couldn't ignore what her presence meant. "They'll want to see you," he whispered. The next morning, her small suburban home became unrecognizable. A convoy of military vehicles pulled up. Marines in full dress stood outside her door. Neighbors peeked through curtains, confused and curious. At the front of the line was the colonel himself. When she opened the door, she looked startled. "I didn't ask for this." "No," Harrington replied softly. "But you earned it." He stepped aside, and behind him, Marines of all ranks stood at attention. Then, in perfect unison, they saluted her. Not for rank, not for fame, but for the call sign that had haunted their stories for years. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I was never a hero. I just did what needed to be done." But Harrington shook his head. "That's what makes you one." Over the following weeks, Phantom 7's story spread quietly, not through newspapers or TV cameras, but through the hearts of those who had served. Young Marines whispered her name with awe, while older veterans wept knowing she had survived. She refused public recognition, but she allowed one thing: to mentor the next generation of soldiers. Her message was simple: courage isn't about medals. It's about standing when everyone else falls. To this day, Phantom 7 remains a symbol of unseen sacrifice. Not because she sought glory, but because she never did. And that's her story. The woman who carried a call sign that froze a colonel in his tracks and reminded the world that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who walk quietly among us. If this story gave you chills, then hit that subscribe button right now to join our channel Grow for Justice, where we bring you stories of courage, sacrifice, and truth that deserve to be remembered. And tell me in the comments below, Kahan Se Dek Rahiho? I want to know where my family of listeners is watching from.